Welcome to the Rotary Club of Tulsa, one of the friendliest service clubs in town. I'm Rhonda Daniel, club president. We're so glad you are here with us today. Let's begin our meeting by having some of our volunteers come forward. Our song will be led by the very talented Joseph Bias, pledge by Jerry Dillon. The piano today is by Tom Wolf. Visitor introduction is John DeBar. And now our invocation will be given by past president Steve Clark.
Will you please join me in prayer? Loving God, we know we cannot merely pray to you to end despair, for you have already given us the power to provide hope if we would only use our powers justly. We know we cannot merely pray to you to end wars, for we know that you have given us the means to find pathways to peace within ourselves and with our neighbors. We know that we cannot merely pray to you to end starvation, for you have given us the resources to feed the world if we would only use our resources wisely. We know we cannot merely pray to you to root out prejudice, for you have already given us eyes for which to see the good in all people if we would only use our eyes rightly. Therefore, we pray to you instead, O God, for strength, determination, and willpower to do instead of just pray, to become instead of merely to wish. Amen.
Last week, Tom Allen gave us stirring leadership in the singing of God Bless America. And while we're still in a time of needing to think soberly about our nation and about the things that are going on around our world, one of the greatest antidotes to despair is gratitude. We have so much to be thankful for in this country. So I thought it appropriate that we sing God Bless America again today. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Shall we pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rotary Club of Tulsa, Club 2500, District 6110. We have a room packed today with important folks in every chair in the room and some standing. In our time-honored tradition, we're going to abbreviate our introductions today. I'd like to start first by giving you a quote and introducing a couple of guests. I quote, "We need real leadership, Democrat, Republican, and independent, to stand up and say, we have to live within our means." With distinguished Senator Tom Coburn today. If you would stand, please, are Cameron Green, Jerry Morris, and Brian Treat. Would you give them a big round of applause, please? Next, if you'll hold your applause, we'd like all of our visiting guests and their host Rotarian to stand. Let's give all these folks a big round of applause, please. Finally, we have a considerable number of visiting Rotarians here today from other distinguished Rotary clubs. We'd like to give them all a big welcome Rotarian. If those folks would stand, and we'll do that, please. Visiting Rotarians. Welcome, Rotarians. Thank you for coming to this club. We welcome you back anytime.
The program has just started, and I'm already moved by the singing and the pledge and the prayer. I can't wait till you come up here. We're all going to be. And it's so nice to have so many visitors with us today. It's so exciting to see a full house. So please, please come back. We are just so glad that you are with us today. I'd like to take a moment to thank today's Rotary sponsors. We have Dustin Holder with Allegra Print and Imaging, Forrest Cameron, the Greater Tulsa Reporter Newspapers, Greg Keck with Jackie Cooper Imports, Terry Lawson with Vision Source Tulsa. We encourage you to do business with your fellow Rotarians. In addition to today's sponsors, let's also thank our many volunteers who were out there early today, and let's thank them for their service today for the meeting. We have one committee meeting today, and that is Shop with a Cop in room 232. And we have just a few announcements. On behalf of the club, I extend condolences to Carol and Curtis Craig on the passing of Curtis's mother this past Monday. Let's please keep the Craig family in our prayers. I'd like to congratulate Tom Gudgel, one of our newest members, who has earned his blue badge this week by completing all the yearling steps. Should we give him a hand? We have an update on the Partners in Education Playground and Track Improvement Project from Mark Short. I guess I'm going to do it, though, I believe. Okay. We have a slide. Isn't that awesome? Look at that playground. We broke ground on this $115,000 project after school let out this past spring. Rotarian John Stava has kept tabs on this installation over the summer, and they expect to have the new equipment, basketball courts, track improvements ready for the students' return in just a few weeks. Please note October 1 in your calendars for our off-site visit to the Cillian Clinton Elementary School, along with the dedication of the new outdoor features in Mike Chittum's memory. So please put that down. We don't want to miss that. All right. Today, we are moving very quickly. We are going to be turning over the program to our Mayor, Dewey Bartlett. He's our Rotarian of the Day. Dewey Bartlett Jr. is serving his second term and is the 40th mayor of Tulsa. He has been president of the Tulsa-based Keener Oil and Gas Company since 1994. He graduated from Southern Methodist University with a Master's of Business Administration and Finance. Mayor Bartlett is dedicated and passionate about the energy industry in Oklahoma. He has served as chairman of the National Shipper Well Association, Oklahoma Energy Resources Board, and Oklahoma Independent Petroleum Association. He's also served as a board member for the Grand River Dam Authority and the Independent Petroleum Association of America. Bartlett's time as mayor in Tulsa is best known for his work to restore physical health to the city during challenging economical times. Bartlett also aspired to make Tulsa the best city for business and job growth in America. Focusing on the energy, aerospace, and manufacturing industries, he has aggressively pursued economic expansion in Tulsa. A native Tulsan, Bartlett graduated from Bishop Kelly High School. Together, he and his wife, Victoria, have 3 children and 2 grandbabies. Please welcome Rotarian of the Day, Mayor Dewey Bartlett.
Well, good afternoon. This is a real honor, a very personal honor for me. I was trying to think of something interesting and different to say about Dr. Coburn, something that you all hadn't heard of before or that I didn't know. So I called my very good friend Frank Harrison, who was Tom's roommate at OSU. Lucky for you, he didn't answer the phone. Because I know now he'll talk. But I did wear my orange tie. So how about that? Well, this is a real treat for me because Tom Coburn has made all of us very, very proud when people come up to us and say, boy, are you lucky to have such a great United States Senator as Tom Coburn in Oklahoma. And as he will say, he's so proud to be from Oklahoma because Oklahoma produces so many good, fine people of leadership, of stature, of integrity, and of good quality, and the ability to stand up and speak one's mind without hesitation, without worrying about the ramifications of what he is espousing. Well, Dr. Tom Coburn was elected to the United States Senate in the year 2004 and was reelected in 2010. An advocate of term limits, he pledged to serve no more than 2 Senate terms and will resign his seat at the end of the current Congress, actually January 3rd of next year from what the senator has told us. Well, during his service in the United States Senate, he showed us the qualities of why he was reelected and why we are so pleased to honor him. But while we also understand the seriousness of his decision, his desire to spend more time with his family, and his desire to be in Oklahoma more, to espouse his points of view and his good qualities. And he is going to keep on that, and hopefully he'll give us an update on what his plans are for the future. Well, throughout his life as a businessman, a family doctor, an independent voice in Congress in Washington, D.C., he has exhibited a life of great courage and of service to our state and nation. And it brings home to me my dear father when he finished his career in the United States Senate, and he was very proud to say that he finished on his terms. I'd like to introduce you to a gentleman that is finishing on his terms as well, our United States Senator and good friend, Dr. Tom Coburn.
Thank you. Have a seat. Thank you very much. First of all, you wouldn't get any information out of Frank because I know more about him than he knows about me. Let me say, first of all, what an honor. Actually, the greatest honor of my life and greatest privilege, other than my wife and children and grandchildren, has been able to have this high honor of representing but not only the people of Oklahoma, but their values, their spirit in Washington. You know, it's not always accepted well when you challenge the status quo. But the wonderful thing about being from Oklahoma and actually having events like this is you get affirmation of what Oklahomans believe, even though it may not be in vogue in Washington, and it encourages us. The second point I'd make is the things that we have been able to do in Washington and the trail that we've been able to cut in terms of oversight wouldn't have been possible without about 65 or 70 Oklahomans that have been staffed me over the last 10 years. And the quality of those individuals, Oklahomans, and their hard work, their intensity, Their courage and their kindness is what has made us successful in the U.S. Senate. So I don't take credit for what we've done. I give the credit to the very people that I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by. And you all need to know that because the power of what our state believes and how we handle ourselves and the courage of our convictions based on what we know to be true about the founding of our country shines best when it shines through other people other than your elected representatives. So I want to thank them and give them credit. I want to spend most of the time allowing a question and answer time rather than just me speaking. I read something this morning. I'm reading a book. It's about institutions and how they work and how they don't. But Clark Clifford, in 1972, he was a former defense secretary that has now deceased, said the rise and fall of great nations discloses that their decline was not due to a lack of power or influence abroad, but to the loss of confidence of their own people at home, confidence in their government, and confidence. Now here's a doctor writing, I can't read my last words. and confidence in this country. And you know, that's really where we find ourselves today. I travel a lot around the country as well as in Oklahoma. I see the same thing. I see a high level of anxiety, but most of that's based on the fact that we're not confident about the future, and we're not confident about the future because we don't have leadership exuding that confidence. And unity, actually unity is a principle of Rotary. And unity is what we need. It doesn't matter what our political philosophy is. The problems in front of us today are grand. They're big. The impact of those problems are going to be much greater on those that follow us than they are on us. They're also going to be much greater on those that are less well off. And the consequences of what we do. And there's no question that they are difficult problems. But since 2008, we've been in recovery, early 2009, and yet our economic growth is about half of what we would expect it. And I really think part of the reason that is, and I'm talking Republican and Democrat, I'm not talking one party. One of the reasons is we haven't had the confidence restored in our future by our leadership. The impact of the problems too often gets divided up based on political philosophy. Let me take a drink and clear my throat. But the consequence of the problem doesn't recognize what your political philosophy is. And the impact is going to impact all of us. And so rather than a politics of division, what we ought to do is have a politics of unity. And there's a couple of principles that go with that. You know, it doesn't matter what our solution is. The biggest problem Washington has is identifying the real problem. We tend to treat symptoms as problems rather than the real problem. And consequently, we don't offer great solutions to symptoms because they don't fix the real problem. So treating the real problem. And you know, I don't have to have my way, but to me, one of the things that astounds me is that we don't address the real issues of the day. Think about the following things. Next year, Social Security disability will be bankrupt. In 2030 now, which will change and diminish, Medicare will be bankrupt, Part A. In 2032, Social Security will be bankrupt. All those problems, when addressed early, are easier to solve than when addressed later. The impact of those solutions will be less severe if we address those earlier. When is the last time in the last 4 years you've seen anybody addressing the three greatest issues fiscally for us? You haven't. And the reason for that is politics trumps policy in Washington, more so than any time in my lifetime. And what we need is real leadership, principle, character-based leadership that says, let's come together. As a nation, let's pull together. We need we need our leaders to call us to a greater purpose, and that hadn't happened. And the greater purpose is giving of yourself to somebody else. You know, I was asking Enid at a town hall meeting what to do about education funding. And I said, well, the first thing to do, you could quit taking the 14% of your total budget from the federal government, and you'd cut your costs about a third in terms of regulatory costs, a third to a half. So what we've seen is a lack of addressing real problems, and we address symptoms, and then we use the political dynamic to advantage one political philosophy over another. In the long run, that divides us. The problems are difficult. Leadership is difficult. It requires sacrifice. It requires sacrifice of a position. And the thing that I haven't ever been able to understand is it more honorable to win an election and not solve problems, or lose an election trying to solve them? Because when I talk to my colleagues about Medicare, Social Security, and Social Security disability, the reason they don't want to address them is because they're afraid the consequences of addressing them might affect their own personal political career. Well, that's not the history of this country. It's certainly not the vision of our founders and the tremendous sacrifices that they went through. But yet, that's where we find ourselves today. And so one of the reasons I'm leaving the Senate is I actually believe I can have more impact in our country outside of the Senate than I can in. And one of those is the Convention of the States, where I believe we use what Mason talked about to rebalance the balance of power between the federal government and the states, one, and to rebalance the balance of power between the three supposedly co-equal branches of government. So that's one of the things I'm going to be doing over the next couple of years, is trying to institute that, to reestablish our power. You know, the enumerated powers lists out the enumerated powers, and they were pretty well gutted by the court, the Supreme Court, in terms of the Commerce Clause and the Welfare Clause. But it still says everything else is left to the states and the people. And yet, hardly can we find any area of life that we're not impacted by the influence and interference of the federal government. And if we really want to grow, if we really want to reestablish liberty, if we really want to see the exercise of freedom in its fullest amount, what we have to do is have a rebalancing and a lessening of the influence of the federal government, and a great increasing influence of the local, community, and state governments. So those are some of the things I'm going to do. I don't believe there's a problem in front of us that we can't solve as Americans. They're all solvable, whether it be the international problems that we're seeing today or our own domestic problems. They're solvable, but they're not solvable without great leadership, and they're not solvable without political sacrifice. And so the difference is between politicians and people who want to actually really solve the country's problems. And so that tension, which you see too often today, the default position is to the political career instead of the greatest interest and best interest of this country. I'd remind you one of the things that Edward R. Murrow, some of you all are old enough to remember. I actually remember seeing him on TV. That dates me. Many of you won't even know it. What he said is difficulty is never regarded by history as an excuse. And let that sink in for a minute. History never recognizes that problems are hard as a reason not to address the problem. It's also not a reason not to solve it. And yet that's kind of where we find ourselves today. I'm hopeful because I look at the young people around our state and around our country and the intellect and the vibrancy of them. They're the ones that are at greatest risk, and those ought to be the people that we employ to change and rebalance our country, much like James Mason had suggested. So with that, let me stop, and I'll take any questions that you have, and we'll go from there. Yes, sir.
How does someone with a high degree of integrity and morality run for office and win when the voter seems to not be interested in instituting the major changes you're talking about?
You know, all I can say is when I first ran for the House, everybody told me not to. It's not the winning that counts. It's the running. It's the race. It's not whether you win the race. It's how you run the race. And the very fact is we have many comfortable people in this room that are not strongly involved in the political process, much to the deficit of our country. And they're not willing to take the costs associated to be involved. Let me give you an example. Ron Johnson's a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. Built a great big business. He looked at his business and his children and his grandchildren and said, what am I building it for if the liberty and the very environment that allowed me to create this is about to be taken away? So he spent a lot of his own money. He ran in Wisconsin. I mean, he's kind of my clone as far as fiscal thought, social thought, and won. And he doesn't care if he wins again. What he cares about is whether or not we fix the problems that he perceives puts this country at risk. So I think the fact is we see this big wall we need to climb over to be able to accomplish it. But winning is this. Winning is getting out there and reestablishing the values that made this country great, whether you win the race or not. Because slowly, we will win again, because those principles are right. Those principles create success. Those principles take care of other people. So it's the running. It's not the winning. And what I would say is our biggest deficit is not a fiscal deficit. Our biggest deficit is courage in this country today. The courage of our convictions and the knowledge of what created this great country. And that's why I go back and say what we need is leadership that calls us to a greater purpose, that calls us to sacrifice. Whenever you've done something on your own and given of yourself to help somebody else, the feeling is wonderful. Because what you know is you made a difference. Sitting on the sidelines not making a difference isn't good enough anymore. It's going to take us all. But it's going to take leadership that builds consensus around solutions and builds non-consensus about what the problem is. In other words, establishes the status quo is not acceptable when you deny what the real problems are. So I think you have a great question, but in your question is the same thing that we see in America today, the discouragement, the lack of confidence. You know, we don't think we can get there. And what I'm telling you is we can. But we need to all get in this boat and row together.
Are you seeing any of that leadership emerge?
The media story on the Senate is not accurate in terms of what you hear. The relationships in the Senate are good, with the exception of one person. I don't say that sarcastically or mean-spiritedly. The fact is what did our founders intend the Senate to be? They had two purposes. One is that you would always protect minority rights. And they wanted that for a reason. They did not want fast movements back and forth in this country. They wanted very slow movements. And the second thing was to build an absolute consensus so that when you made a change, you had a broad enough basis within the Senate to where you could touch all groups in the country saying you had support. So when the Senate first started, nothing happened if one person objected to anything. And then it went to 75, and then it went to 67, and then it went to 60, and recently it's gone on nominations and to federal judges to 50. Well, that's exactly an undermining the very principle of forcing consensus. And when you have leadership that will not put the issues of the country today in front of the Senate, there's 460 pieces of legislation sitting on Harry Reid's desk that will never see the light of the day. Most of them are necessary, but they're not politically palatable to him in the campaign environment that we find ourselves. Well, I want to tell you, that's not leadership. That's cowardice. That is cowardice. If you're a U.S. Senator and you can't defend your vote on anything, you have no business being there. I mean, you have no business being there. And so, you know, I believe there are a lot of great people. There are a lot of career politicians in the Senate that are going to always default position to their own political career. But there is a growing number of people within the Senate, both parties. Some of my closest friends are Angus King, an independent from Maine, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Democrat. I have dinner with those guys once or twice a week. You know, the consensus to do the best thing for the country, not for a political career, is what we're trying to grow in that. But leadership matters, and right now, the leadership is such that the country is not going to get the benefit of bipartisanship and consensus that it could. Yes, sir.
What impact has your living at C Street had on your life in D.C.?
Well, let me tell you what C Street is. C Street is a house where we pay rent. We have one meal there a week. And it's surrounded by a Bible study, and we actually have about 26 members of Congress that come there. But the fact is we get regrounded. We get reconnected with the principles of our faith, which then remind us about how we're supposed to interact in Washington. So we get disciplined there, we get chided there, we get teased there, we get made fun of there. But the fact is it's a safe place to express your faith, one. And number two, and it's bipartisan, by the way. And number two, get the advice of a good brother when you're having trouble making a decision. So it's probably been my best experience in Washington in terms of being surrounded by that group of people. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think is going to happen in Iraq with the situation with ISIS? What do you see happening in the future?
I don't know if you all heard the question, what's going to happen in Iraq? I don't think anybody knows. I think the first thing is we made critical mistakes leaving Iraq. And just go back and look at South Korea. What do you think would have happened after the armistice in Korea had we pulled all our troops out? South Korea was run by a dictator at that time. Do you think there would be a thriving democracy in one of the larger growing economies in the world in South Korea? Or would it look like North Korea? So the question is whether we agree it was right or wrong to go into Iraq, the fact is we owned it, and we ought to be interested in stabilization of that country. So I think we made a critical mistake not leaving 40 or 50,000 troops there in a safe manner, but the influence of that and the pressure of that. So I think that's number one. Number two is I don't know that Iraq isn't lost, regardless of what we do now. We've made critical foreign policy mistakes, and it's not Monday morning armchair. These were mistakes that we were talking about at the time the decisions were being made. You know, world affairs is based on what expectations are and whether or not you're respected. And if you create an environment where you lose respect, you lose influence. And if you limit your leverage, just like right now the president and his administration is saying we will never go back into Iraq with boots on the ground. Well, what happens if it requires boots on the ground to save 40,000 Yazidis? Are we to say, we're going to let 40,000 people save because politically I said we're not going back? Why would you speak that? Why would you want them not to be guessing about what we would do and what we wouldn't? Why is it always the political answer that you got to protect your political backside rather than make a consideration about what's best for this world when America leads and what happens to the world when America withdraws? And what you're seeing today. You think Crimea would be a part of Russia today had we had strong leadership? I don't. It never would have happened. We have sent the signals of weakness and withdrawal from the international scene, and the world is worse off because of it. And that doesn't mean we need to be the Boy Scout that goes out and stops every interference that happens in the world. But there is a big difference between projecting power based on principle and truth and withdrawing totally from the world scene with your power. And what we have done is we've told most of the radicals in the world, go for it. We're tired of fighting. Yes, sir. I didn't hear what he said. I didn't hear your question, sir. What are my views on abortion and why? You know, I've delivered well over 4,000 babies. There isn't a complication of pregnancy that I haven't handled. I've had some great help from some very good specialists in Tulsa through the year. One, my mentor was Glenn Haswell. I don't know if you all knew him. Wonderful man, brilliant man. I believe God's the creator of life. When a sperm and an egg unite, there is created a set of genomes that have never before been created in the history of man. It's unique. Life has value. I believe the termination of an unborn child for anything other than saving the life of a mother is exactly what it is killing a human being. I don't speak those views without having given a lot of thought. My grandmother was the product of a rape. She never knew her father because her mother was raped by a U.S. Marshal before she entered Oklahoma territory. But the fact is with our standards today, we wouldn't think a thing about terminating that pregnancy, and that life, her life, my mother's life, my siblings' life would have never come into existence. And I may not be all that great of a physical specimen. My medical history would say I don't have really a great gene code. But I kind of like the fact that I got to live and marry my wife and have 3 kids and have 7 grandkids and 3 great sons-in-law. And I say it for what it is. It's the taking of an innocent life. And I really think of it as one moral error that is complicated by a second moral error. And I don't know anywhere in ethics where you teach that that's a positive thing. So I will say that I think this country is divided on that issue because of the way we handled it, rather than had we handled it the way the Constitution said we should have handled it. The Constitution reserves that for the states to decide. And had we had a slow burn on the states, this debate, we wouldn't see this tremendous division in our country over, quote, choice. Choice for what? Choice to terminate a life that we have today. So sorry for that. May not be in agreement with me. But when I see a little 3-ounce fetus that's sitting there moving its arms and hands and my legs, I'm supposed to say this has no value? This had no created purpose? There's no consequence to snuffing this life out? I can't go there. All right, let's move on to something else. Maybe. I've written 2. The next one isn't going to be political. It's going to be on anxiety, worry, and fear, because that's what I see everywhere I go. People struggling with, to me, and their faith-based answers that solve those problems tremendously. And yet our knowledge of those is not great. And I'm going to write it from 2 perspectives, one from a faith perspective and then one from a secular perspective. But I'm not sure I'm going to do it. Yes, sir.
Who do you see on the national scene as the up-and-comers that are going to follow in your footsteps?
Oh, I'm not sure that I know. Look, I think James Langford's going to do a great job. He has done a lot of the stuff that I have done that has not gotten the notoriety for it. So I'm really excited that he has the potential to become the next U.S. Senator from Oklahoma. I know him well, and here's the difference between James Langford and a lot of members of Congress. James Langford doesn't speak unless he's studied the issue. He works harder than most members of Congress, and he understands that treating a symptom isn't fixing the disease. Treating the real disease is what fixes it. So I'm excited to see him go up there and make some differences. And, you know, he's got a breadth of real-world experience in dealing with people, and that's what Washington's all about. Yes, ma'am, or sir. You never have term limits passed by Congress. They're never going to do it. They're never going to write themselves out of a job. It changes with a constitutional convention where the states get together and say, this is now a change to our Constitution. You will serve no more than 2 terms in the U.S. Senate, period. Well, it's not the same cycle because the members of Congress don't get a vote on that except as they vote for state legislators who then will approve it or disapprove it. So that we markedly lessen the career powerful politicians' influence on how we, the people, control their influence over us. And we need to get back in control. And it doesn't mean these are bad people, and it doesn't mean it's dishonorable service. What it means is their judgment too often defaults to their political career rather than to our best interest. And I see it time and it's the majority of the thing I see is members of Congress making decisions to make themselves look good, which in the long term hurt our country. Yes, sir. Oh, I don't know. I try not to think about that. I'm thinking about how do we salvage the Senate and start sending President Obama some decisions to make. There's 50 bills sitting on Harry Reid's desk that would markedly stimulate economic activity in this country by limiting regulations, by the XL pipeline, by all these other things that we could do to actually take advantage of this low-interest environment and really grow this country. So I really don't spend any time on that. Presidential politics bores me because it starts 4 years before the election, and it also takes our eye off the ball. I don't care who's running right now. I'll pay attention a year before the election. And that's 2 years and 2.5 months from now. So, and I'm not being critical of your question. I know that's a common thought, but what we ought to do is be in demanding leadership changes in terms of their behavior of the people that we have now. We can't wait 2.5 years. The issues in front of our country are too great. Yes, sir, John? Have they gotten paid back? Yeah, pretty much so. The question was of the money that was loaned out during TARP, have the American taxpayers been? Probably in excess of $60 billion to the positive on it. There are some that didn't, but the interest costs and everything else associated with it was a positive in terms of the Treasury, and more so in terms of how they stole private ownership out of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They're about $50 billion positive on those two organizations as well. So it has been, but we created that, you know. We created the system, and we need to make sure we've decided regulation's the way to solve that. We never go through that again. Freedom is the way we should have tried to solve that. We don't go through that again. And it was a tough time. It was a seminal vote for a lot of people. Yes, sir.
If you could give yourself advice on today, on the first day that you went into Washington, what would you tell yourself back then?
Probably to be a little bit better listener than what I was then. I think I'm a far better listener now. Either that or to become a whole lot more radical than what I was. You know, look, we haven't clawed back much. Remember the sequester and everything you were going to hear, how bad the sequester was going to be? And then we got a budget deal this last year between Murray and Ryan, and the spending went up. You know how many people were laid off in the sequester? One. One out of the millions and millions and millions of federal employees, one person got laid off in the sequester. And so when you look at the VA and all the problems associated with it, and the lack of honesty and integrity in the operation of the VA, what I would put forward to you, if you put that same type of scrutiny on every other area of the federal government, you would find exactly the same thing. A lack of integrity, a lack of accountability, a lack of honesty. But we haven't put that kind of scrutiny on it. And that's normal that would happen when you set up a system of bureaucracy where you can't fire anybody. And that's the problem. There is no accountability in the federal government because nobody can get fired. And I don't know how many great managers we have out there, but not many managers are really good if they can't set the guidelines and the parameters under which people work for them, and if they don't meet that, they can't terminate them. It's a big problem. And the unions run the federal government. Right back here, all the way in the back.
Would you share your extent of your concerns with the threat of radical Islam, and also some concrete ideas on long-term response, American response to that threat?
Great question. It's real. We have a greater threat than we did 8 years ago, a much greater threat. If you read General Flynn, who recently got fired by this administration, one of the best heads of DIA we've ever had, he was not going to sit by and let the people be told something that was not true. The fact is Al-Qaeda, and in terms of its effect, has about doubled in the last 8 years. And now with ISIS, which is a much more radical, if you can think of something more radical than Al-Qaeda, much more radical group is now coalescing thousands and thousands of radicals from around the world into this area that they control. So the threat is big. When I sit on the Intelligence Committee, and when I hear all the untruth that's said about the NSA, and know when my staff has been out there and when I've been out there frequently, and I know what really happens, and then we can't talk about what really happens because it's all classified, but the media can say anything that Edward Snowden says and then make it fact. It goes back to the critical point that I started with. The lack of confidence in your government breeds real problems. It breeds failure for a republic. And so how do we handle that? Well, it certainly isn't by cowering down like a beat puppy and saying, we're just going to withdraw from the world stage, because the world stage is coming to us. We may be blessed by 2 oceans and friendly neighbors on the north and the south, but it's coming here. Remember, the head of ISIS was released from us, and when he left, he said, I will see you in New York. And they mean it. They don't believe in equal rights. They believe women should be slaves. They believe in this radical Islam that doesn't believe in human rights. And it is a very real threat, and we will have to redouble our efforts. And it will take a coordinated strategy between us and other free-loving people to be able to defeat them. But we just added 20 years to the war on radical Islam by our withdrawal and poor foreign policy in Syria. Yes, sir. No, I think, if Republicans take over the Senate, you'll see the Senate function the way it was designed to function. It did that way the first 2 years I was there. It functioned well. I drove them nuts, but it worked. I offered tons of it, and I still do. They don't ever get considered now. But the fact is, the people of Oklahoma ought to have a voice on every bill that comes through the Senate. And if Senator Inhofe and I think we can improve a bill by offering an amendment, we ought to have the right to do that. And all that will be restored. The Senate works. It's like running a second grade class. Just human behavior. If you set parameters and you say, we're going to be finished by now, otherwise you're going to be here the weekend, guess what happens? Senate finishes. They'll finish a bill. And I'll withdraw some of my amendments. There are certain amendments that I wouldn't withdraw. But right now, you have no voice in the U.S. Senate. Zero in terms of legislation, because I don't get to offer amendments. And I used to average about 6 amendments to every bill. The total number of amendments been offered in the last year in the Senate by Democrats and Republicans alike is a total of 20. I'd do that in a week. That's a total of all the members of the Senate in the last year is 20 amendments. So you think it isn't being run by a dictator who doesn't want the best interest for this country by not considering and debating the issues of the present day, but yet wants to have a political outcome that benefits him and his party? And in terms of the tradition of the Senate, past leaders, no matter what their party, they never would have sacrificed the Senate for pure political gain. All the way in the back. Yes, ma'am. Look, I believe in the Virginia form of campaign finance. Virginia has no limits on anybody to any candidate. They also have no problems with campaign finance because it all has to be published. And if I have to account to you why I took $40,000 from somebody or $10,000 from somebody, I actually believe in the First Amendment. And I believe corporations have First Amendment rights. I think churches have First Amendment rights. I think members of Congress have First Amendment rights. I think everybody ought to have them. And I think the very fact that we would start, through the wisdom of the people in Washington, would say what's appropriate and what's not in terms of the First Amendment. We even had them offering a bill to modify the First Amendment. So I believe the First Amendment is crucial to our freedom being maintained. All right, well, one more. Yes, right there. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, wait a minute. Right here. You, sir. Wait a minute. Somebody's already talking. Stand up so he can see you so he won't talk. There we go. Well, look, I think I've already espoused it. I think you need to fire the leader of the Senate. I don't say that lightly. The reason we're not addressing key issues in front of this nation is because politically the leader of the Senate has decided he doesn't want his members to have to make votes on those things. And he wants to create a storyline that says Republicans don't want to get along. It doesn't have anything to do with that. I'll compromise with anybody up there if it doesn't violate core principles to move a bill. The fact is they don't want to have to cast a vote because they may actually be voting against what their constituents want, and that may hurt them in election, so therefore they don't want to cast the vote at all. I call that cowardice. And the way you solve that problem is change the Democrat leader or put us in charge. And I think the election ought to be about one senator. It ought to be about Harry Reid. And whether or not he is effectively helping or hurting this country with his dominance of policy lack versus political calculation at every corner. That's not leadership. It's certainly not leadership for the whole of the country. All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate being here. Thank you, Rotary.
Wow. Can you say wow? I loved a couple of points that he said. Courage and kindness shines best when it's seen through us. And unity is a principle of Rotary. And I really think that he spoke a lot about Rotary today, even though you were speaking about other things. I think it spoke to us as Rotarians, what we need to do as citizens. A book recognizing today's program will be presented to our partner in education school, Celia Clinton, and I love the name of this book. It's High Time for Heroes. And that is dedicated to you, sir. We have upcoming programs. Ken Levitt, Executive Director of the George Kaiser Family Foundation, is coming next week. And then the next week, we have the head coach of the University of Tulsa men's basketball, Frank Haith. Right? All right. All right, as we conclude, we're going to listen to the lyrics of In the Sun by She and Him for some light-up Rotary fun. I hope the music brightens your day. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we are adjourned.